The Golden Gate Bridge endures a century of earthquakes and high winds because it relies on meticulous planning and strict adherence to structural physics. It was engineered to survive. Most software companies are not. The 2022 software as a service crash exposed the fragility of an entire industry built on the premise of growth at all costs. Cheap capital rewarded speed over structural integrity. Companies hired unskilled labor, bought excessive tools, and ran immature sales motions, assuming volume could replace physics. This chart tracks quarterly revenue growth. The market expanded aggressively, pushing valuations higher, before colliding with these black highlighted periods of correction. The system broke under its own weight. The math collapsed. In 2015, it took roughly 100 cold emails to generate a single sales opportunity. By 2023, the cost of acquisition doubled, and that number spiked to over 1,000 emails. The volume-based funnel failed to scale. Fixing this requires a new operating framework. Revenue generation must be treated as a science. To survive, a business must run like a recurring revenue factory, applying the precise engineering discipline of a manufacturing plant. A factory has 3 goals: scalable production, sustainable efficiency, and durable quality. In software, quality means reliably delivering the promised result to the buyer again and again. Recurring revenue is the mathematical effect of that recurring impact. If the impact stops, the revenue stops. The foundation of this factory is the revenue model. Monetization logic has shifted. Buyers used to pay upfront for the value of ownership. Today, they pay periodically for the impact of access. This flips the financial risk entirely onto the seller. The seller now pays for the infrastructure and development upfront, recognizing profit only over a period of years. To earn back that capital, the seller must secure renewals through ongoing delivery. This creates a trap. In the ownership era, sellers closed 1 in 3 pipeline deals. In the subscription era, lower commitment from buyers floods the pipeline with unqualified prospects, dropping the win rate to 1 in 6. The days of selling a high-priced box of perpetual software are largely over. The responsibility no longer ends at the transaction. In a subscription model, acquiring the wrong customer, one who lacks the infrastructure or skill to actually achieve their desired impact, guarantees churn. It is a mathematical death sentence for the factory. Because the business model changed, the way we measure data must follow. The 125-year-old marketing and sales funnel is structurally broken for modern business. It ends exactly at the point of purchase, completely ignoring the retention and expansion phases where recurring revenue actually lives. This animated diagram illustrates the solution. The traditional funnel mirrors outwards symmetric right after the close, creating the bow tie. This extends the customer journey through onboarding, adoption, and expansion, laying a standardized metric layer over the entire timeline. The center knot of the bow tie is the hinge. This is where volume metrics like leads and qualified opportunities transition into committed monthly recurring revenue. The bow tie splits the business into 2 distinct domains. The left side is the value domain, where the company acquires customers by promising a specific outcome. The right side is the impact domain, where the company secures retention by delivering on that exact promise. Consider 2 sales reps. Rep A has a 33% win rate but high churn. Rep B has a lower 20% win rate, but filters out bad fits early and correctly educates the buyer. Because of compounding retention, Rep B teammates significantly higher lifetime value over 5 years. Measuring acquisition volume alone is noise. First-year revenue represents a tiny fraction of a customer's true value. Success is defined by the recurring impact delivered after the purchase is signed. To measure this properly, executives must stop reasoning by analogy. Just as Billy Beane ignored traditional baseball scouting to rebuild his team around strict statistics, a revenue factory relies on the first principles mathematics of growth. The math of acquisition is nonlinear. The final win rate is actually the product of the conversion rates of every single meeting in a sales cycle. Because each extra meeting multiplies the total by a fraction, removing an unnecessary step from the sales process can immediately increase total yield. This split-screen visualization tracks the difference between the 2 halves of the bow tie. Acquisition is an open loop defined by linear attrition. Retention and expansion form a closed loop of exponential accumulation. Like the simultaneous opposing time domains in Christopher Nolan's film Tenet, the two sides of the bow tie operate differently. Acquisition requires speed and high frequency to combat attrition. Expansion requires longevity, generating returns slowly over years. This makes net revenue retention the true engine of hypergrowth. A $100,000 contract with a 110% net retention rate compounds. Over 5 years, that single deal is worth over $600,000. Hypergrowth does not come from blindly doubling lead volume. It is the result of marginal gains stacked across every stage of a mathematically nonlinear system. But math requires execution, and growing companies hit a silo crisis. As headcount scales, marketing, sales, and success departments adopt incompatible tools and conflicting methodologies. The internal system fragments. The operating model solves this by establishing an organizational API. Every department standardizes on a uniform methodology called SPICED: situation, pain, impact, critical event, and decision. To find the impact a customer needs, the system borrows the man-in-the-hole narrative arc mapped by author Kurt Vonnegut. A rep identifies the situation, diagnoses the pain, and exposes the severe negative impact of taking no action before outlining the path out of the hole. Impact splits into two categories. Rational impact benefits the company, things like reduced costs or higher ROI. Emotional impact benefits the person, the threat of being fired or the opportunity for a promotion. Humans decide emotionally, then justify rationally. The critical event in SPICED is the deadline that creates urgency. It is a stick, not a carrot. If missing a specific date results in adverse consequences, it establishes true priority and dictates the entire decision timeline. By forcing every team to speak this exact language, the operating model transforms the business from a chaotic collection of individual heroes into a synchronized, process-centric factory. As the factory scales, it follows a predictable S-curve through 3 distinct maturity phases. It starts with scalability and velocity, moves to sustainability and cost control, and finally lands on durability and quality. Along this curve, every company hits 12 specific revenue breakpoints. Early on, growth is driven directly by the founder's personal involvement and intuition. To scale into a global entity, the organization must transition away from founder-led tactics and establish a repeatable process. This transition is a massive phase shift. Moving a culture from people-centric to process-centric requires engineering rigor, takes roughly 18 months, and offers no warning signal to leadership when it needs to begin. The payoff is raw performance. Data from 50,000 sales opportunities shows that reps who execute a disciplined, repeatable process outperform those who rely on intuition and hero ball tactics by 1.53 times. A CEO's primary job is not to react to the effects of the last phase shift. It is to anticipate the next phase shift 18 months before the current model hits its plateau. The final layer is the go-to-market model. This is the only layer humans touch daily. It organizes marketing, sales, and success into a synchronized, standardized production line. Operating a GTM motion requires the strict consistency of a franchise model. Every motion must be identical and perfectly repeatable. You cannot scale a process if every region and every manager invents their own methods. The governing rule is that the cost of the motion must match the revenue it produces. A $50 a year product demands a no-touch, product-led engine. A $500,000 enterprise contract demands a high-touch, relationship-based engine. Attempting to run multiple, incompatible GTM motions simultaneously without a standardized operating model fractures the system. It is the primary cause of ballooning overhead and collapsing productivity in maturing companies. A watchmaker deliberately conceals complexity. The simplicity of telling time hides a meticulous balance of wheels, springs, and gears. A recurring revenue business is exactly the same. The system relies on deep roots in mathematical first principles, while its branches entwine the precision of process with the human element of customer relationships. Hypergrowth reduces to a clear causal chain. A few actions, executed precisely at the moments that matter most, improved by small margins, and repeated reliably. These actions compound through the bow tie to generate recurring impact. Strategy is not positioning or clever marketing. It is the disciplined, mathematical engineering of the entire customer journey. Deliver the impact, and revenue follows.